Hello, viewers. Today, in this series of intergenerational dialogue focusing on transformative leadership, we will address yet another very topical issue, which we theme beyond the hashtag, turning youth protest into real power. As you probably all recall, in June 2024, Kenya witnessed a remarkable moment in its democratic journey as the Gen Z generation of our country, once thought to be politically detached, rose up in unprecedented unity to challenge the Kenyan Finance Bill 2024, which sought to introduce a series of new and higher taxes on essential goods and services, which included bread, which people eat every day as a staple, fuel, motor vehicles, mobile money transfers, and even digital content creation. Using digital tools and hashtags like #RejectFinanceBill 2024, #OccupyParliament, etc., young Kenyans are mobilized nationwide, demanding justice, accountability, and a fairer social contract. What began as an online outreach quickly evolved into a well-coordinated civic movement that captured the nation's attention and forced the policymakers to listen and to take notice. This moment not only redefined citizen activism in Kenya, but also signaled the political awakening of a generation determined to shape its own destiny and its future. But as history shows, protest is only the beginning. In this episode of the Mantle Podcast, we go beyond the hashtag to ask, how can this generation, the Gen Zs, transform its passion and online power into real, lasting influence on matters governance? To the Kenyan Gen Z, I ask the question, can your movement evolve from mobilization to meaningful participation in the decision-making spaces that you say you have been excluded from? Are you indeed ready to take on the mantle of leadership and all that it entails? Together with my esteemed guests today, we shall explore this and other issues, and especially what it would take to turn useful energy into structured civic engagement, credible people-centered leadership, and the transformative change our country urgently needs. To engage in this conversation, as I said, I have two esteemed guests. And I would start with the one who represents the older generation. Remember, this is an intergenerational conversation. This is not a matter of hierarchy. It's simply African tradition. We respect age. And with us today is Reverend Dr. Timothy Njoya. For those who don't know Reverend Timothy Njoya, he is, in the first instance, a renowned theologian. He is also a human rights advocate and one of Kenya's most courageous voices in seeking justice and democracy. Ordained pastor in 1967 under the Presbyterian Church of East Africa, Dr. Njoya has spent over 5 decades as a human rights advocate, seamlessly blending faith, morality, activism, and intellectual thought. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, and even beyond that, he became a fearless critic of dictatorship during the Moi era. He tells me also a bit of the Kenyatta era. And he endured arrests, which were not just arrests, and assaults for seeking and speaking truth to power. Beyond the pulpit, Dr. Reverend Njoya has written influential works, including We the People, in which he challenges both political and theological boundaries, even in retirement. He continues to inspire young generations to pursue ethical leadership, gender justice, and moral governance. There is much, much more one can say about Reverend Njoya. He is with us here today. So as he participates in this conversation, you have that opportunity to do so. So Reverend Dr. Njoya, for those who don't know, that doctor is not an honorary doctorate. It is an earned PhD. Was it Princeton University?
Yes.
Princeton University, one of the highly respected universities in the world.
And Doctor of Divinity from Toronto University.
That's right. I am very, very pleased and honored, Reverend Dr. Njoya, to have you on the Mantle Podcast. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much, Madam Maria. You've been a friend to me for almost all those decades, over 4 decades. Mm. And we worked together, shoulder to shoulder. And there are many things we started together since that time. And we are still activists.
Mm. Yes. Yeah. Karibu sana.
Yeah,
you talk a bit more about that as we, address some of the issues of this particular podcast. On the other side, we have a neighbor representative of the young generation, the Gen Z plus groups that are the ones now telling us we need to move forward. And that is not disrespecting what has been done. My guest in that regard is Ms. Makena Wairimu. Makena is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, a legal consultant, and a civic educator whose work bridges and intersects with the law, governance, and social impact. Makena is well known for using digital platforms to make complex legal and civic issues accessible and engaging, sparking national conversations around the issues of justice, accountability, and citizen empowerment. Her fearless honesty in articulating these issues has earned her a strong following among the Gen Z generation as she continues to challenge how Kenyans think about governance and public participation. Beyond her legal work, she hosts the witty and thought-provoking podcast titled I Just Think It's Funny How, where she uses satire to unpack social and political realities with humor and, thought-provoking insights. Makena therefore represents this new generation of legal minds using knowledge and creativity to inspire civic awareness and transformative change. Makena, I'm very, very pleased and honored to have you today on the Mantle Podcast. Karibu sana.
Asante sana. Thank you for having me.
And viewers, I'm your host, Maria Nzomo. Now, let's just get into it, Reverend. As I've already said, you have been part of Kenya's democratic struggles for over 5 decades. From the days of, the late days of the late President Kenyatta, mm-hmm. the entire period of the Moi era, and of course, to the present. So that makes just about 5 decades you've been pushing for multi-party, you push for multi-party democracy, which you are now taking for granted. There was a time you were really almost the jury of one-party state. You have continued, without a stop, on advocacy route, advocacy of a different kind, where you emphasize a lot on issues of morality in statecraft. those of us who study political science and international studies and diplomacy, when you say there is no morality in statecraft, it's taken as a given that that's how governance runs, that we should not expect morality in statecraft. You stood and you have stood for the very opposite, and you are saying it is possible and it is necessary. You have also stood, as I have already said, for social justice and people-centered governance. Now, given all of that, when you look at the events starting with June 2024, when the Gen Z uprising started, the protests, you saw, something we had never seen before. Protesters flooding the streets, not just of Nairobi, but elsewhere in the country. And the digital spaces were filled to capacity. Looking at it as somebody who has been in activism for a very long time, what did that moment signify to you about this generation's understanding of justice and freedom?
Yes, thank you very much, Maria. And also I thank those who are going to participate or participant in this podcast. But before I answer your question, let me just state that you said I'm a theologian, I'm a church minister, but I have never dichotomized society or creation between what is holy and unholy, what is religion and what is secular. For me, a human being is a human being, and the democracy or politics is by definition, I know the Greek meaning of politis, meaning citizenship. Politics is a system of governance where everybody cares for everybody. And also everybody is cared for by everybody, because we don't start life by caring for ourselves. And now, 84, I've started feeling that I also needed to be cared for. That's what means governance. System of governance in which systems are established, not left rules to care for all, not for some. So in that way, I had started transformative leadership to mean a leadership that inspired and motivates both leaders and followers to achieve significant change and reach their full potential. Such leadership encourages, inspires, and even empowers the followers to become leaders in themselves, not to become sycophants or not to become flatterers. For leadership whose followers are flatterers, and which is Gen Z refused to become, leadership whose followers are flatterers and sycophants is an autocracy. It is narcissistic, or simply the leaders of that things are a personality cult, and they are not leaders.
So where would you place the Gen Zs in that context?
The Gen Z, I'm saying they are resisting. They are refusing. And I was about their age when I began, I was below 40, when I began activism from the pulpit. And the Gen Z are very clever. Cleverer than I, perhaps, because I was using a pulpit out inside the church, like in St. Andrews. But they are using the social media.
Which we didn't have at that time. We didn't have social media.
That adaptability is what I call innovation. Is what I call transformative, being utilizing the resources of your time and the time and the knowledge as your platform, as your pulpit, to move forward as a vehicle. So the fact that Gen Zs are using the social media, the digital innovations and inventions to transform themselves from being sycophants, from being dancers and flatterers of what do you call autocrats. That use of that pulpit, and allow me to call the social media a pulpit for Gen Zs. That is the greatest innovations the youth have in Kenya. Because nobody told them, here I have built a platform for you to use, to change, to better your life, to improve your conditions. So now the fact that I was using a church pulpit, it was still a social media. It was not, the pulpit is a social media, like even digital social media, only that it was not digital. And if I were a minister today and cannot use my pulpit as a social media, I would rather be dead, because you are useless.
So given that this pulpit, the social media that has been chosen by the Gen Zs, in terms of the key issues, especially the justice question and the freedom question, because they're saying they need to be actors and part of public participation, inclusion. In other words, they understand issues of justice and freedom in a certain manner. Would you align with that? Would you agree with the way they're approaching issues of justice and freedom?
I'm agreeing, because what I'm saying, leadership, as you said, is intergenerational. It is a relay where you pass the baton. The social media has passed the baton from me using the pulpit, because I retired in 2001. It has passed the baton to my children and grandchildren. And this pleases me very much. And that's better than being eulogized when I'm dead. I'm not referring to anybody. I feel that it's a miracle that my children and grandchildren have taken this relay and have taken the baton.
Yes.
Only my prayer is that don't drop the baton.
There they are. Then Makena is here. I'm sure she'll add on to that. But more specifically, Makena, you have listened to the Reverend on his understanding of the way the Gen Zs are going around the issue of justice and freedom. You are a lawyer and also a civic educator, partially through the podcast that you do. My question, and you can start by maybe just responding very quickly to what the Reverend has said. Would you say that the Gen Z's protests change your perception in any way of how young Kenyans engage with power and in matters of application of public policy, meaning policy action?
I would say it did. And maybe tried on what our Reverend has said. It's intergenerational, the fight, but the system is also intergenerational. What Gen Zs came to learn, it was a coming of age, basically, as to the realities of the political systems, which probably we had been shielded from before that. And the anger and the calls for justice were as a result of that. So I think prior to that, Gen Zs probably did not know how dire the situation was. And then now they're starting their lives. So the finance bill really affects them a bit more. So they are coming to learn the realities of the system. And I would think that they were using the tools that their elders had used, because that's all they knew. And they thought they would work. So the digital platforms are very important in the sense that they provide civic education and they provide spaces for people to have these discussions, which the Gen Zs were probably not interested in before. So it's a place for us to learn ourselves as we teach others as well. And the intergenerational aspect is we are learning from you who came before us, what works and what doesn't, which is really important. Because for people who've done research, we're able to then distill that and give it to them and then have discussions. Yes.
Where would that intergenerational conversation come? Would you be willing to accept that there are people like Reverend Njoya who not only have, passed on the baton, but even after passing it on, they are still making themselves available to educate and to mentor in a manner that helps you not to make the same mistakes perhaps we made, or whatever the challenges that we faced. Where would you see that intergenerational conversation going?
To answer your question first, I'll be frank, yes. I do feel a majority of our elders have failed us in that regard. Mm-hmm. I'd say it also starts from home. Before I alluded to the fact that the Gen Zs were sheltered basically from the political realities. Mm-hmm. These conversations are not happening in living rooms. Mm-hmm. From the time people were 6, 7, they were sheltered. Mm-hmm. So in that regard, first of all, I'd say there was that failure. Mm-hmm. And also in African households, it is taboo for children to speak up, even from a young age, about just small things and give their voice and their opinion. Mm-hmm. But then you expect when these children are now older and they're adults to all of a sudden have a voice. Mm-hmm. You need to empower children from when they're young so that they become a more empowered generation of adults afterwards. Mm-hmm. So in that regard, yes. And then politically, there are so many people who have fought for justice. Mm-hmm. And there are so many others who have fought against it. And unfortunately, they're the ones in power. And this is why I like to say we have responsibility, because we get to choose who our mentors are. We get to choose who we idolize. We get to choose who we follow. Mm. So in that regard, I would say that responsibility falls on our shoulders, because we have been given 2 examples. I'd say one bad and one good. Mm. We have just normalized terrible leadership as the electorate, as the citizens, and as Gen Zs as well. It's up to us to change our minds. It's up to us to look towards the right leaders because they are there, to pick the right lessons, and then to also ask what did not work, and then to look for a way forward together, including spaces like this podcast. Yes.
Yeah. I think the greatest question now, and where obviously we need not just one conversation, but many conversations going on in different platforms, is the question of sustainability of this movement. And to put it into context, the Kenyan Gen Z uprising, in a sense, one can say it's not really that special. It actually mirrors a global youth-led movement. Yeah, it's a movement, some have forgotten, even in the context of Africa. The Arab Springs was in 2011. It started in Tunisia and it spread all over the North Africa and the Middle East. And it was started by young people, around an issue, just like here, where it started around the finance bill of 2024. And then you have other movements from other places. More recently, the Nepalese youth protest, which was earlier this year, and you do know how it ended. They ended up literally overthrowing the movement itself, forcing out a government and them running away into exile. We can't see the end of it, obviously, because that's just a beginning. And the most recently, just next door, our own neighbor, the protest movement, which was unprecedented in Tanzania. These and other examples, they are telling us there is a global movement, among the youth. So from your perspective, as someone who has, is part of it, and you have been following, obviously, beyond, Kenya, what has been going on, what do you see as the common factor that links this and sustains these movements? And what can Kenyan youth learn from the successes or mistakes of similar movements in other countries? Now, before you speak on this, I would like to hear the insight from Reverend Dr. Njoya, as someone who can stand outside the movement and say, this is what I think we are seeing globally happening, and what it means for the world, and the change that needs to occur, because Kenya is not unique at all in that regard. And then we'll come back to you, and perhaps you speak more on the matter of digital platforms, especially. Reverend Njoya.
Yes, thank you so much for your approach, the Gen Z as transformers. You talk of transformed social media and into their platform, into their pulpit, to just like, let me put an example, it's funny. When Raila couldn't reach the presidency, he used the president as his platform, as his pulpit, to talk to the people. So he could use Moi, who defeated him. He could use Kibaki. He could use Uhuru. He could use Ruto. He stood on their shoulders. He climbed on their shoulders to air his views. I'm not saying whether I agree or didn't agree with his views, but at least he used them as his digital, as his pulpit to reach. And so it was very inventive and very creative for Gen Z, because they have phones on their hands, cell phones on their hands, to utilize that as a platform, because that's what the spring, what do you call the
Arab Springs.
In Peru, they are using it. They are using it almost everywhere now, every continent now. That's commonality. That's common platform. So I'm saying that somebody came with an agenda, not a transformer, which was to me one of the best transformative agendas, because I'm a socialist. And he came, I don't know from where he came, and he said, we want a bottom-up economy with a mouth. But when he was given the platform to implement the bottom-up, he disappeared as his talker. Now, he now talks, not transforms. He speaks, but does not do. But I mean, that's how he creates psychophancy. That's how he creates people who have been impoverished by the system, who have been not only impoverished, disempowered by the system, and they become sycophants, they become idolaters by worshipping leaders, because they cannot sustain themselves without bribery, without handouts. So I'm saying, making a country and transforming a country not from self-reliance, from development, from a development agenda to a bribery agenda, into a handout agenda. That is the worst thing that has ever happened in Kenya history. Now we impoverish people to enrich ourselves. So when the Gen Z recognize that, when they recognize that we are being robbed, they did not become idolaters. They became unbribable. They relied on their own power, youth power, went on the streets, have an uprising. I was very happy. Anytime I met them on the streets.
You mean our Gen Zs?
Yeah, my Gen Zs. When I met them and they asked me, what do you think of this? I said, not to think. I'm part to that, wholeheartedly, because I went to the State House that time, that in the middle, as NCCK, National Council of Churches patron. I had refused to go, but I ended up being there. When Ruto came to me to meet me, he didn't see other people, I think. I told him, I've come here, and I pointed at, I thought I would be shot. Because I pointed at his face, I think I told him.
When was this?
Last year during Gen Z uprising. You didn't see me. We went to the State House.
There are too many things going on.
And I told him, I've come here to tell you that you are dead. Not dead as Ruto, but you are dead as president, because when you co-opted the parliament, you killed one of the organs of the state. We elected you to become the president of the state, and there is no state because you killed one organ of the state. So you are dead as president. So I told him, now we have come to resurrect you. Do you know? I told him, you are dead. We are come here for your resurrection. Because if you let free the parliament, there will be a state and you will become a president.
But tell me, Reverend.
Let me just finish that statement.
Yeah.
Do you know, He didn't allow me to continue. He said, yes, yes, yes. He asked for the bill, and he cancelled it in front of all of us. He said, I'm not going to implement this bill. He agreed that he is dead, and he is going to rise again. But I'm saying, the Gen Z, that was verbal. And I talked against talking and not doing. Mm-hmm. I talked about bottom up. I'm a socialist, so I rate the bottom up as the core of socialism. But did he become socialist? No. He remained the most idolatrous capitalist, grabber. I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about what kind of untransformative leadership, what kind of retrogressive leadership we have in Kenya. Mm. And we have to have it saved and changed. And Gen Z have already made a mark in trying to transform. They are transformers not simply of the society, but are transforming the leadership itself.
But very, very quickly, going forward,
yes,
because we are talking about moving from protests to actually bring about your change. Would you say that what we are seeing in Kenya is part of a global youth-led movement? And if it is, what can we learn from other countries? Like the Arab Springs, we know it started very well, but then somewhere along the way, the system has a way of, reacting in a manner where it cures that movement, manages to cure that movement. How can even that movement protect itself? In other words, if you were to advise the Kenyan youth, based on what we have seen elsewhere, what is it that they would need to do to avoid making mistakes which perhaps other movements around the world have made?
Yeah, Maria, I'm very grateful you noticed that. What is common, and you are calling a global movement of Gen Zs, the social consciousness. You remember Prof who said, a leader must have a critical consciousness so as not to repeat the mistakes he is trying to remove, or because he was part of the old system. A leader must be conscious to look forward, to look at this world from the future, not from the past or from the present. What you imagine, creative imagination, or innovative imagination of looking as to what you want, so as you move to it, you don't move from the past. You are moving from the future. So what is, I don't want to criticize the Gen Z because they may remember the criticism.
Fine.
They may not remember the criticism and not remember my constructiveness. That means I'm saying, what is common in what you have called global, I call it global Gen Z movement, is not what is global is not Gen Z's. And what is global is not what they are fighting for and a leadership. What is global is the platform they are using, is the pulpit they are using.
You mean the social media?
The social media is what is common to all. But what they are fighting for, is unique to each country. In Kenya, we have, as you said, we know what it is. It is, they are fighting against being lied to, being duped, being told, I want to help you move from where you are to the future, but instead of being moved, they are now, the stolen from are being given a fraction of what is stolen from them. In Kenya, instead of being creating jobs for them, instead of giving them jobs, they are being given handouts, 1 meal, instead of being enabled and capacitated.
So what would you advise in that regard?
That they keep on pressing on, not simply to fight for the transformer, but to have a space in this country for creating productivity, for being productive, being able to offer and put an input for us, their generation, whether it is in farming, whether it is in industries, whatever. AI can help me to industrialize this country, even single-handedly. They can use AI to use whatever resources Kenya has.
Yeah.
To market it globally.
Yeah.
And because that's their platform, don't allow China and America and Eastern Europe, 3 countries to utilize AI to dominate, to become modern imperialism, to dominate us. Use the same to reverse and remove imperialism. And the Gen Z, if they can use the social media to do what they have done in Kenya, they can use the social media to modernize Kenya and even become greater than Eastern Europe, greater than China, and greater than America. Yes. Yeah.
Makena, of course, you'll be seeing this from the other perspective. And in your case, I'm sure your main, strategy would focus around the question of how best to utilize social media to communicate, to mobilize, to educate, etc., which then would translate into power that then would enable you to, avoid some of the mistakes that have been made by other movements, but also perhaps move in a sustainable direction. What is your view?
I'd first like to address what I think is the common denominator.
Yes.
Globally. I think it's just late stage capitalism, where there's no money in the coffers to bribe people, where we can no longer, our generation doesn't have the luxury of buying its head in the sand, because we are at the end of the system. Basically, it's collapsing. And the generation before us could afford being lied to that things are okay, that the economy is fine, that you've gone to school, it's fine. Now we have people who have PhDs who are driving Ubers because they cannot get jobs. So we've come to the late stage capitalism. I think that's what's going on globally. But
the capitalism, if I may say so, is not new.
No, it's not.
It's an old system which has been there from the 17th, 18th century Europe. What perhaps has changed is that it is taking new forms in the 21st century.
I think the change is that it's coming to an end, because capitalism is not sustainable. The system eventually eats itself every 300 or so years. All the great dynasties that were capitalists eventually...
So you are suggesting that the Gen Z movement is moving us in a direction where we may have a socialist revolution?
Yes, and it's by force, because...
By use of force?
Just because of the circumstances. There's no money to lie to people that the economy is doing well. Yes, so we can no longer afford to bury our heads in the sand. That's what's going on everywhere. The system is basically the same, it just has different heads here and there. So I think that's what's going on. On top of that, what we can learn, I was really impressed by Nepal. One, because of their turnaround time. They did not spend too much time on looting, burning. They did whatever they were doing, and they made sure that they installed, I think it was their former Chief Justice, someone who they trusted was an elder, to hold in place for elections. So they didn't stay too long like the Arab Spring in the fight, which I've come to realize is one of the issues. The longer you fight that, the longer you are in the system. The more it takes, the more the system takes root. So if you're able to cut it off at its legs immediately, implement a plan, change, then you start to pivot off what the script is. But if you stay too long, like the Kenyan Gen Zs, we've done one mandamano, another one, it kind of helps the system understand what you're doing and better prepare for the next one. So it actually makes the system a bit stronger, as opposed to just taking 1 week, organize yourselves before you do it, ask yourselves what you want, then go and implement it, as opposed to just fighting shadows. So I think that's what you can also learn. Nepal was very fast with it.
But was it entirely dependent on social media?
It was, because they held elections on a platform called Discord, which, like 2 weeks before, I told Kenyans, if you're going to do anything, you can use your social media platforms to vote for people. It is something...
It's doable.
It's doable because, yes, we can all go on social media and rant. We can go and say, your president is capitalistic, he's this and that. But if you leave the conversation there, you've not really done much. You've just enraged people but you haven't empowered them. So I was telling them that basically it's better.
Who are them? When you say them, aren't you one of them?
I am, yes. But sometimes I do have different views from my peers.
That's the other thing. Is there that solidarity within the movement?
There is, but obviously we're not monoliths, so we can't all think alike. And sometimes it takes, because I think for me, this work came from feminism, like maybe 10 years ago. So I've been deconstructing the system slowly by slowly. It's not just political. Then they've all intersected. For some people, they just had their come to Jesus moment with the Finance Act 2024. Some of us have been deconstructing the system a bit longer. So obviously it will take time. So when you're having these discussions, there'll be differences in opinion. So, but one of the things I was saying is just don't use social media just to rant. You can also use it as a way to exercise your power. And one of the ways I was telling them is, it doesn't have to be right away, but you can highlight the person in your community who's doing an absolute great job with minimal resources. And we can all say that's who we want for our MCA the next term. That's who we want as our governor. You can use your social media platform to highlight good leadership. And then galvanize that into a political party, have those be your flag bearers and run with it. So you turn your social media just from a place where you're ranting into a place where actual change.
But what do you see as a trend now here?
They actually laughed at that idea. And it was 2 weeks before Nepal. So when Nepal happened, I told them, see, it's possible. But what I've...
But Makena, you keep saying them, they. Shouldn't you be talking about we?
We.
Yeah.
I use they when we have differing opinions, I guess.
Could that be part of the problem? That ideologically you are actually not together. The only thing you have in common is that you don't have jobs. You are all hunting for jobs.
I don't think so, because actually like 75% of my viewership does agree with what I say. It's the 25% who are still trying to get on board or trying to understand the system. So that's why I say we have differences in opinion, which is okay, because in a democratic society you'd expect differences in opinion. So yeah, I really don't mind that. I also take time to make sure I don't also censor my comment section, regardless of how much I don't agree with people. You're not trying to turn into a dictator as well with the space that you have. Yes, so I have offered that, but I think it will take my generation a bit more time with coming to accept that freedom comes with responsibility.
And sacrifice.
They want the freedom without actually having to give up anything.
So it definitely will not come.
It will not come.
I've been a bit surprised that there are so few, there's such little reaction from the Gen Zs. Maybe it's because I don't spend enough time on social media, regarding these latest abductions of Kenyans, who have somehow mysteriously disappeared after going across the border. Even those who have been protesting, they are small. You even when they are spotlighted, you can even count them. What's going on?
From my side, I think it's totally, from my side, I've gotten a different reaction. Almost every other piece of content I interact with is either about Sudan, Congo, or Tanzania. They're very supportive. But sometimes I wonder if it's more of an ego thing, because most of the comments are, we started the movement, you guys are our students, you're doing better than us. It's more, there's a bit of some ego in it. But what I've seen mostly from the creators I've seen, they are talking about what's going on in Tanzania.
So going on to even that example you gave of Nepal, if you start talking successes and mistakes made which you would not want to make, what kind of intervention do you think are needed now? Elections are coming up in 2027. And is there thinking beyond a person like you who has a different alternative, and you are saying many don't even agree with you? Then what is agreed upon among the Gen Zs? What in your search for solidarity and the spaces being open for you. And many of us are, the older generation, we are quite happy to pass on the baton to you, but you must seize it and do what needs to be done. Is there some place we are coalescing and congregating where there is a shared understanding of the way forward?
Unfortunately, at this time, I would be lying if I said there was. I've noticed that my generation heavily relies on being led and not leading themselves. So it's come to a point where
leaderless. Is that sustainable?
It was in the beginning, but I think
going forward,
it's not, because unfortunately there are people who like being led, and someone has to lead, and you are hoping that someone steps up and does the right thing, like Burkina Faso. But I think the problem is, again, what I alluded to, that the fact that my generation doesn't want to take responsibility. They want the older generation to fix what they broke. And majority of the older generation are very interested in keeping the system as is. So then you get to an impasse where you're asking the same people who've broken the system to fix it for you, and they have no interest in doing so. So I would say the next logical step is then operating out of the system, which is forming your own political parties. Mm-hmm. I would find, especially in 2027, that would be the only way that we would get ourselves out of this mess.
But by those of you joining politics, this seems like you're joining the mainstream existing political parties. That has been my observation.
That's the problem, because you think you can dismantle the system by being in the system, mm-hmm. while it has repeatedly shown you it will swallow people up. For example, there was this journalist who used to do Jichopebu on KTN. Really showing what the government was doing. Once he got into government, did the same thing the government was doing, absorbed into it.
So can we really expect a difference? Because the momentum with which you came in, more or less you were telling us, you have reached your limit. There is nothing more you can do. Give us space. Get out of the way. We show you, what needs to be done to transform this country. Then if you are not there to do it, who's going to do it? Because, for example, I've asked quite a number of Gen Zs, are you going to run for office? And many of them, no, the answer is no. And somebody, if you are not courageous enough to join a political party, to actually create a political party, Reverend Njoya will tell you, we formed very many new political parties when we started saying the regimes of the day had let us down. The first thing was to create, you didn't just talk multi-party, you actually more parties than we needed. Mm. But it was a way of saying we need to create a new political platform from which to do the fighting. Otherwise, you just get absorbed and co-opted into a system which you are trying to get rid of.
Absolutely. You said something very interesting at the beginning, which is actually a piece of content I'm releasing today, which is Kenya is basically a one-party state, if you think about it. We claim that the constitution is so great, that we have democracy, that we have multi-parties, but the opposition is consistently absorbed back into the government, and they change their tune once they're absorbed back into the government. What would really help Gen Zs is, and I think when the country as a whole, is redefining, it's more spiritual, it's more intellectual before we get even to the political party. Mm. We need to dismantle what we've been taught is the correct way of doing things before we get to the political party. Because as I was doing my research for that specific piece of content, I came to realize tribalism is still alive and well. And political parties are arranged according to tribe, mostly. Mm. And also, from the comments I've seen in my own content, I've seen that my generation has also absorbed that. We are still tribal, as much as we'd like to tell us.
Say you are tribal. You say it can't be rhetoric. You have to live it.
Exactly.
In your actions. And, when leadership comes with a lot of responsibilities, I don't want to appear like I'm lecturing you about this, but those of us looking out from outside and who are not competing with you for political office, our assessment is that you are not really being involved where it really matters. Those in the opposition who are not in government, they have created their own movement. They have, said they'll put their differences aside so as to grab power. Yes. What do you have as a Gen Zs? You need to have your own strategy. And
absolutely.
And I think those of us who care for transformative change, that's what we would be talking about. Looking forward, because we have to look forward with hope and with determination and willingness to do what needs to happen. If you are talking about mapping out actionable pathways, meaning you move now from protest to really what needs to happen in terms of policy and public action. Yeah? The two of you are sitting here from two generations, but I'm sure you have different views on this question. And Reverend Njoya, obviously he has his own ideas. What we really want to hear now, because the viewers are listening to us, they want to know what they can take out of this discussion. You are not new to protest, and you know the difference between protest and policy action. And you even used to tell us, if I remember, Reverend Njoya, that protest must evolve into policy action and character into leadership. Now, within that context, if you can still remember that, this is what I would want you to tell our viewers. What specific steps need to be taken by young Kenyans to move from street demonstrations to positions where they can actually influence and transform governance in a sustainable manner that would work for the whole country and for everyone for the better?
Maria, I think I'm very happy in the way you're asking questions, but let's not trivialize the Gen Z into asking for jobs, for power, because that one, the Constitution's already aroused, or trivialize the Gen Z into fighting for specific thing. They're fighting for human dignity, what you call principles and values of governance. Gen Z feel they are denied their humanity. Humanity consists of freedom, sovereignty, and dignity, and equality. When inequality in Kenya is such that material acquisition divides us into the haves and have-nots, that's what they are fighting. They are fighting for social transformation, not simply for jobs. I think people like Jesus, or like Moses, did not use violence to achieve anything. What they used is they transformed society into self-consciousness, to being human, that they became ungovernable by the oppressive system. And I'm saying that they fought for values, for human values. So all I'm saying that Gen Z have achieved a lot by reminding us that we are primarily not objects, not commodities, to be commoditized. They have transformed already, if we don't lose that game, pacifism into activism, which we ourselves, you and I, did. What did we do? We didn't go to forests as guerrillas to change Kenya. The people who are biting us and beating us and breaking our bones, do you know what they did? They are the ones who surrendered and said that we have abolished this Section C of the Lancaster Constitution. They are the ones who called Ashigai to come and change into Constitution. The same people, because the society changed. Let me put it this way. I want to use old cliches. Pacifism is the ocean, the water by which dictators, autocrats swim. Sharks swim through pacifism. Is the water through which they eat the small fish. The big fish eat the small fish by making them passive. Drain the water, drain the lake and the ocean in which the sharks move, subjugating people into the passivity. into being beggars. The producers become beggars. That is what the Gen Z have taught us, that you can mobilize the masses to stop being passive.
The question I am asking, and which perhaps will help us all, is that it's a given that the Gen Z movement has done enormously well in a very short time in terms of making their voices matter. And they have been heard by those who care to hear and who care to do more than just say, I have heard. But those who care are not the ones in power. They are those who are like the Gen Zs. They are not Gen Zs themselves, but they are ordinary citizens who are all supportive of the movement, but they are not the ones in power. Those in power, we saw what they did. Temporarily, they were supportive. It had almost become business as usual. If that trend continues, and the Gen Zs assume that now they have done their bit, they have made their voices heard, they have stated their case, and now they can sit back and wait for these elites, political elites, to sort out their grievances. That integrity, that humanization you are talking about can go back to square one. It is like you start a struggle and then you hand it over to the people who it is not in their interest to support you, because they cannot go indefinitely waiting to get livelihoods. They need it now. They didn't just say it, they want it done. And I don't think, and Makena will allow you to speak on this, where we have reached, it is an unfinished journey.
Absolutely.
We have started well, at least for the Gen Zs, very well. They have made their voices heard, yeah. But there has not been any transformation as far as I can see. The question is, who is going to bring about this transformation? It cannot be. You cannot expect people who are enjoying power and all it comes with to be the ones to initiate that process. And that's why we are asking this question, Reverend. Now that we are where we are, what steps to sustain this movement, to sustain what they fought for? What needs to be done if one is advising young Kenyans to move from this initial effort of street and digital demonstrations, where they have made their case very well, to actually be able to influence those who are holding on to the mantle and to the leadership positions. And in the process, we completely abolish the status quo that allows this to happen by transforming governance and replacing it, not just for the Gen Z youth, but the whole society, to one where everybody benefits and it is sustainable, not just for the generations present, but for the future generation. That is the question that now is begging the answer.
The next step, if we don't achieve peace-free, the way the Gen Z did, is that the present state will bring a violent revolution against itself. So it should be warned that it has been warned. The Gen Z fired a warning shot that we don't want a violent revolution in this country. That's what they are asking. And I don't think I want to say anything else. I wanted to say that you cannot refuse a warning shot, a peaceful one.
But you remember we also did throw a warning shot in the 1990s. And we went, because a lot of the Kenyans who ended up fighting for the new constitution were actually in the same situation as the Gen Zs, the majority of them.
We changed, but now they are refusing to change. I'm saying we changed the system.
Yeah.
We now have a new constitution and multi-party. I'm saying if these ones who are there are so daft that they cannot learn from history, that Europe demolished its own capitalism and imperialism by fighting 2 world wars for refusing to allow us free. It created opportunity for India, God-given opportunity for that world to get free, okay? By killing itself. So I'm saying, even these ones who are thinking in power, they might create opportunity for others to overthrow them.
Makena, you have the floor on this. Now, you just tell us, very candidly, what do you see as the most practical ways that our Gen Zs, can channel this energy and their potential for organizing to actually translate that into power and using civic participation as, in a very different ways that you are doing it. Community organizing, public consultations, and policy advocacy, among others. What do you see happening in the best case scenario? Because we know what is not happening.
Best case scenario is what I had said earlier, where I see my generation being able to leverage social media to form new political parties. That I'd say probably 1 or 2. It doesn't need to be that many. Where we can highlight people who are really great leaders, give them a platform, or we can crowdfund with said political parties, or we can have experts come and write for us what our MOUs will be, and then go to the ballot with a political party. For me, I don't think it's that hard, to be honest. But to fight against the system, you have to create a parallel system. And for me, that would be the same way we go on social media and we say, use it for light things. We can also use it to highlight who is currently doing well in a leadership position, how to elevate that, how to finance that as well. Because we are very good at financing for tragic cases, which is not a bad thing. But we are not good at funding things that will help us collectively. We're not good at even funding our own businesses. Most of the venture capital that comes into Kenya is mostly for white Kenyans. We are not good at helping ourselves progress. So it's very simple. We have the platform. We have the good leadership. We just need to put those two things together.
You're saying within a Gen Z movement, you have good leadership.
Yes, there's someone probably in Taita Taveta who's running a community center with very limited resources, but doing such a great job. Great leaders are not as scarce as the establishment would have us believe. So once we link the great leadership with the platform and the monetary contributions, that's literally it.
Perhaps building on the point that Reverend Njoya was alluding to, in terms of the morality of this issue, trying to think about the various possibilities for, interrogating the actual barriers and doing something about it. The types of leaderships that have sustained the situation, how can they be transformed? Perhaps be dismantled using social and value-based institutional reforms. In other words, try to prick their consciences, but by way of example coming from yourself.
I'd say on my end, I don't think such leadership can be reformed. It's already displayed, it's reared a very ugly head, repeatedly. And I'd like to maybe offer a contrary opinion to Reverend Njoya, that he says the system has changed. I believe the system, capitalistic oligarchy, has just remained from time immemorial. It has just had different faces over time. To completely end that, if you're going to go maybe socialist direction, social capitalist, you would have to create new structures. Because unfortunately, when you're a creative, you can see the vision in your head, but not everyone can see it. So unless you actually build a structure and people then see, oh, that works, is something different, that's when they'll follow. And that's where the leadership comes in, the creative aspect of leadership, because you then have to bring that idea to life for people to buy into. Yeah.
So very quickly, just to finish on this point, as a lawyer, what would you consider to be the biggest legal or institutional challenges that would discourage young people from engaging in meaningful public affairs management, meaning engaging in leadership and governance?
And since the Constitution.
The Constitution is a barrier. I thought it would be an asset.
It's a barrier.
How?
If you think about even like the public participation article, which mandates that public participation should happen before a bill is passed, it does not mandate that whatever the public discusses must make it to the bills. So the Constitution in that sense is very performative. Tells you have the right to life. But we know of so many people who are begging police stations and nothing has happened. Very on the surface gives you, but there are no enforcement mechanisms, or it's not even self-enforcing in the sense where there are automatic penalties, where you have the three arms of government. They're supposed to check each other. But the executive through parliament is what funds the judiciary and the legislature. The person who feeds you controls you. The independent offices are funded by the executive through parliament. You can't really call them independent.
So you would say the judiciary is not independent?
No. They get their funding from the executive. And even so in the previous government, the Uhuru they had, they really went to, because he refused also to approve judges. That should not be in the Constitution. Judges, it should be independent. If we've elected judges, there's no reason why the executive should be centered. But the Constitution currently centers power with the executive. So
basically you are saying there is a disconnect between citizens and existing governance structures and processes.
Yes, and it was done on purpose.
It was actually
done
deliberately and intentionally done. Now, we are approaching the end of this conversation, but I want, if you could, Reverend, just quickly tell us from this conversation we have had here. If we talk about interrogating barriers, what would you say is holding the youth back?
Thank you very much. My last point was I said the JNC, what they did in 2024 was a warning shot. And I warn also the system which is there that throughout the world, if you study the revolution, they began like that. When the system, the autocrats and the dictators could not listen to such warning shots, they were removed by violent revolutions. That's where we may be heading in Kenya if we have a stubborn system that does not listen. Moses moved from Egypt because the pharaohs listened to the mass demand. Pharaoh was not stupid enough to wait to be removed by violent revolution because people would not have tolerated him to stay longer. And the world over, even in Russia, the Russian Revolution, SARS refused to listen to shorting tomorrow social values. So that's what I'm saying. Asiyefunzwa na mamaye.
Kafunzwa na ulimwengu.
Afunzwa na ulimwengu. We have, I don't want to call them stupid. We have people who don't listen to wisdom, who don't listen to information that you are being given a peaceful warning. The next will not be a warning. It will be force. So I'm saying that you have nobody in the world has a monopoly of force. Did you know that? I've learned a lot from you, Makena, and thank you very much. When Maria, we were making the Constitution, we forgot to say who will be distributing the cake. We wanted to build a Constitution where human rights and democracy are obeyed. But now I hear with one element, I don't want to amendment on this Constitution because I don't want to create a loophole where dictators want to strengthen their possession. But we did not say whether the executive will remain in control of the purse, of the money. That one point, I've heard it from you, Makena, for the first time. that
Yes, not many advocates talk about it.
not many. But you have educated me. You are my lecturer to know that a mistake occurred, a shortage of intellect, because I knew that a parliament is a graveyard of intellectualism. It is, and I saw, and I didn't know that graveyard could reflect on me in the future.
So on the same point, as you are concluding that point, as part of the older generation, the older leaders, who is obviously supportive of the Gen Zs, like so many of us, and who, in your own capacity, you have mentored several generations of reformists in your own right by what you do and so on. How can you, because the Gen Zs are really caught in a dilemma. They don't even know whether to trust us enough. They don't know who to trust among us.
They should trust us.
Listen, they have to trust somebody because they have to learn something. And, it's just as an elder now, talking as an elder who has been there, seen it all, how can we better support this new generation without them feeling that we are coming through the back door to co-opt their movement, to control their agenda, to remove this kind of perception from them so that they feel comfortable listening to those who are really genuinely saying, we are with you, but you have to be the one taking the driver's seat because this is about your future. Yeah? But you can learn from our mistakes. So what would you say to them to actually be able to trust at least some of us? Because many of them, they are operating on low trust. They don't trust the older generation. Is it not correct, Makena?
Very true.
Now, what would you tell them? As another, there are some who are watching you and saying, this reverend, what is he trying to tell us that we don't already know? How would you package this?
You hear this from me. Mm-hmm. Maybe you don't expect it.
Then now address her because they are the ones who don't have anything.
Know to trust.
Yeah.
We are not trustworthy. at all. Nobody, not Maria, not I, not Makena. We are not trustworthy. Let's join them to struggle and fight for the cause. The cause is the issue. Have we achieved our objectives? Mm-hmm. Why should they trust us before they have achieved that? It is not who started us. It is them who started for themselves. They should persist until they have won. And I said that if they don't win, asiyefunzwa na mamaye na ulimwengu will be taught by violence.
Yeah.
Because that's I have told you, all revolution in the world had warning shots, but people in power, even the SARS in Russia, because we have SARS in Kenya, even the SARS in Russia refused to listen. And I'm seeing we have people wise like Pharaoh in Egypt, not only allowed the Israel to live, he gave them reparation. Do you know that? Mm. He gave them, he asked people to offer their gold, their everything for the people to be able to go on a journey. We should not, the Gen Z should not, if they seek support, they will be like us, bribable.
Yeah.
They should not be bribable. They should continue and persist until they achieve their objectives. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And Makena, on the same, about this mistrust between the youth and the older generation. There is a sense in which, and for obvious reasons, you have come into this, literally confrontational in the sense that you are crashing doors that were closed. And you're saying, if you can't open them normally, we are going to get in by force. Okay. And we'll do what we have to do. Now, if in order to accommodate the like-minded, and I believe that a lot of like-minded older people who would want to work with you, what do you see as the best strategies of turning this confrontational approach into collaboration with the like-minded among the older generation?
I'd say that lies on us to make the first move. Mm-hmm. What I've noticed in my generation is we have idolized corrupting power. We have idolized bad leadership. So it first lies on us to change our lens through which we view leadership, then search for our elders who are good leaders. From that point, then you can have discussions because you feel like it's safer. People who have a proven track record of siding or anti-establishment, because there is a treasure trove of knowledge there of how to deal with the system, what works, what doesn't work. But first, we need to stop looking in the wrong direction. And they've molded for us that all leadership is bad leadership. We first need to remove that from our minds, then seek out good leaders who have been there before. So I think we would have to be the ones who make that first step.
Yeah.
And when that step is made, Reverend, because I'm still on the issue that there is some mentorship that still needs to be done by those of you, especially those who come from a direction of appreciating, values, good values. What would you, if the Gen Zs are willing to let you in into this sector to offer your ideas, what would you want to tell them about good leadership, what it entails in terms of matters of integrity, sustained courage and sacrifice, which you know a lot about, and accountability above all, before they take the mantle of leadership?
I'm very, very grateful for that last question. When I got saved in 1956, I was 16 years. I got radical. My church was not accepting it. It was sacking ministers for saying they are saved. So that is what attracted me. The reaction of the church about people saying something so biblical as salvation cannot be allowed in my church, the PCA. So I became radical, I became revolutionary. And I will die radical and revolutionary. Until, not against a Christianity as a psychophancy, as a flatterer of the status quo, of colonialism. I became immediately when I left the room where I confessed salvation, I was against, I not in the same platform as Mama who wanted lad, like the Gen Z, some want only the job. Not one single issue like claiming in a story lad for the original owners, but for human rights as equality, as justice, as human dignity. I became revolutionary because I felt empowered. And I'm saying that we need not to be one item good people, because when you achieve that, you can even be given by the oppressor, and he will have silenced you.
Give you what?
He can give you jobs.
A job does not, translate into integrity.
Affirm your dignity and integrity. So all I'm saying that don't ask the oppressor to give you anything. Remove him, or let him transform. Overthrow him. That's what I call revolutionary. Or if he doesn't want that because he'll bring it to himself. I said Europe brought to itself the head of imperialism.
And after removing him, how do you become, as the new leaders, how do you become accountable?
It is not possible to remove dictators and everything without having enough transformed people to continue with your movement, with your values, with your systems, with your principles.
Who is going to engage in that transformation?
Among the GNC, we have those people, they have not come out, but they'll come out. The movement creates its own leaders. You get me? It creates its own. The problem we did with our new constitution and the multi-party is that we transformed two things: institutions and structures. But we forgot and the law, and we changed the law. But we forgot to change the psyche. The psyche remained the capitalist old psyche, and it came into power. And actually, I became the chairman of trying to bring the parties together. And the reason I failed to bring parties together, and they lost the election twice to Moi, they could not come together because all of them wanted to be Moi. They wanted to be like him, to be in power. And I don't want to keep on quoting books. Prof said that some people don't get transformed or transformed because they believe to be free is like to become their oppressor. That to be is to be like your oppressor.
So for the Gen Zs, what would you...
Some of them maybe want to become like their oppressor. They want... And they can be given such jobs. They can be made permanent secretaries. And some of them can be co-opted. You know how to co-opt... Ruto has co-opted the parliament. If somebody can co-opt the parliament, don't you think he can co-opt the JNC?
So what would advise you then give the Gen Zs to avoid that and to learn?
Persist in fighting for justice and human rights, for values and principles, not for a specific thing. Yes.
Well said. And you, Makena, on almost the same. Even values, basic values, that we talk about, it is not something you just are born with. It is something you socialize yourself into. And it comes from everyday, acts of whatever you do, whether it is, being a good citizen, doing the right thing when nobody's watching, over your shoulder. Those are values you socialize yourself into and make it part and parcel of your own personal principles. At least from where I'm seated. If you agree with me, because I'm seeing you are nodding your head, how do you, using that framework, how do you see young Kenyans practicing that kind of good leadership in their daily lives, not just in politics, because it's not just about politics, but in how they build community, within our own communities and influence others online. Like, there are some people who are quite nasty on social media. I don't care whether they are Gen Z or other. I think people have to be also, very civil and act in a manner that shows they care about feelings of other people. So how do you see this, even if you're looking at it from your role in civic education, how do you see this happening? This kind of transformation of young Kenyan to understand that there is a very close connection between good leadership and governance and your own social values and principles that you live every day.
That quote rings true to me every time I have a conversation with Kenyans. You get the leaders you deserve, or your leaders are a reflection of the society, which is a bit scary for me with also my generation, because I have seen time and time again us being absolute reflections of the leaders we've had, and it's not exactly a good image to be looking at. And that's why before you had asked me if I'd want to be a leader, if I don't take up a leadership position, and I had responded that there's an amount of work that needs to happen with the electorate before I would want to go into that space. And that's the psyche that I think Reverend was talking about. Because you can change, I believe it's possible to have a revolution and still have the same leaders come in afterwards. The Arab Spring was a good example of that. We need to fundamentally change our principles, who we are. Because there's even one thing that, even at a traffic light stop at night, you will find there are people who still, jump the traffic lights. It's what happens in our daily life that translates to the leaders we think we can allow, because that's who we can relate to. So what I try to do is with my civic work is not just tell people, oh, this is the situation. Is try to get people to question, how did you arrive here? How did you let such a person become your leader? And that's the empowerment. Because when you see yourself as the problem, you can change your leadership. When you see them as the problem, you think they need to change.
You are holier than now.
Yes, but they only change when we change. So we need to, what I do is basically try to get Kenyans, I actually mostly speak to Kenyans, not their politicians, get them to question, why have I made the decisions I made? Why did I vote for the last president or whoever I voted for last time? Have they delivered? Why do I keep on asking someone who cannot deliver to keep on delivering? So we start questioning ourselves. It becomes introspective as opposed to projecting bad leadership qualities on the current leaders. That way, it slowly starts to transform from inside. And I think that's what, before any other transformation, that's what needs to happen first. And it's slow.
It's a process.
Yes.
It's not an event.
No.
It certainly isn't.
Yeah.
So we are still on a journey on this one.
Yeah.
And now we are closing this episode of Mantle Transformative Leadership series. And I would like each one of you perhaps to make your closing remarks, very concisely. And I start with you, Reverend, just to focus on just one thing. I'm sure there is a message. Normally when you want somebody to take home something, this is your last, the parting shot. In your case, considering the conversation we have had here, what you would call your timeless word of wisdom. What would that word of wisdom be if you are addressing the Kenyan youth about how to act, or to, how to, place themselves within a power context and do the good they are supposed to do with it. In other words, the total understanding of power and how it should be played out. Issues of justice, where do they come into that agenda? And this whole value system we are concerned about around the question of humanity.
Thank you so much. Let me say that, define leadership. A good leader like Moses or like Jesus Christ represents God to the people and represents the people to God. He does not represent or present himself. He becomes an obstacle to his mission. If you are presenting yourself, you are offering yourself rather than representing God to the people. So God told Moses, I have sent you to as God, to become God above him, not equating yourself that you want to become another Pharaoh. You are beyond the autocracies and the dictators I'm sending to. You are above. You are not going to imitate them. So I've sent you as God to Pharaoh to represent me as the one who created people in dignity, in freedom, and human. And I want you to represent those people to me. So when you have people who want a reward, who want to gain for leadership, those are not leaders, they are thieves. So I'm saying they're using politics as a platform for stealing. They are not the only thing they are not breaking into our hearts to steal our humanity. They are not breaking into our bodies to steal our lives, but they end up killing us, our lives, by the way of coming to represent themselves and with their own agenda other than divine agenda, to empower and enforce the dignity and the humanity and the freedom of everybody. Because, as I said, I define democracy as a system of governance in which everybody cares for everybody. Love the neighbor as yourself. In which everybody cares for everybody. And a system of governance in which also we agree to be cared for by everybody, not to care for ourselves, not to use your means to care for myself. I will allow you either to care for me, not to use your taxes to care for myself, and use your forest to give myself plots, and use your everything you have for myself, aggrandizement. So I'm saying my parting shot is that we've allowed the Gen Zs not to be given, not to achieve democracy as a human rights and a system in which everyone will be cared for by everybody and care for everybody, not to care themselves. To reduce the issue of the issues to one issue, job, it's like they reduce the issue of the mammal to lad. And look at, we are still fighting for lad, aren't we? On tribal basis. We ought to have achieved justice, concern for one another, love for one another. That everybody will need land, not us too, not those, even those who own the land, they were entrusted by God that land for the good of all, not for their self-service interest. When we start reducing, I don't think it's a problem of Africans, when we start reducing the purpose of existence, the purpose of being human into a commodity, we are commoditizing ourselves. Don't use job you can be given by somebody in power as what you are fighting for. You cannot be reduced to that spite of, you cannot be itemized. Don't itemize Gen Z. I prohibit the media from itemizing Gen Z into jobs and into work. I wanted to say that Gen Zs are fighting for human rights and justice. And justice. That's all.
Indeed.
Bottom line.
Yeah, thank you. And Makena also on the more or less on the same, but going back to that point which we went around, but now we have come around and we are closing. We need to give hope to the Gen Zs. It was very courageous of them to come out and do what they did, especially in June 2024. And even if they seem to have lost a bit of momentum, we want to give them hope and confidence that it can be done. It's not late. This is just the beginning. What would be your parting shot or your last word to your fellow Gen Zs and other young people? Is that indeed we have reached that stage where we can now move beyond protest and begin to build a different kind of a movement where we are looking at a situation where it is really engaging with the power itself.
I'd tell us not to minimize self-responsibility, not to minimize ourselves, basically. Think from maybe the time we were little, we've been taught you're here to be seen, not to be heard. That's you're an adult now. You can take control of the narrative. You can take up space. And there's change starts from you. You are not insignificant. The things you do around your neighborhood, your country, are not insignificant. And it's not as hard as they have made it seem. I know we've only been provided with one example of leadership. We can literally create a different blueprint just by going out and doing it. Yes. If we have it in our heads, you can definitely make it a reality. Yes.
Yeah.
What I'd tell us.
I think that's a good parting shot. And viewers, we are coming now to the end of this particular episode. And as we close this powerful conversation, it has become quite clear that the Kenya's Gen Z movement has been reawakened and has reawakened our nation's democratic spirit and reminded us that civic power truly lies in the hands of we, the people. The protest against the Finance Bill 2024 turned out to be more than just a moment of resistance. It was a call to reimagine what good leadership, accountability, and participation should look like in our time. But as our intergeneration dialogue today has shown, hashtags and street protests, however impactful, must evolve into sustained civic engagement, policy influence, and institutional reforms. The challenge before us, therefore, is to ensure that the passion so ably demonstrated by our youth translates into structured, ethical, and transformative leadership that reshapes our governance for the better. Let this be, therefore, the turning point, not only for Kenya's young generation, but for our entire society, to move from protest to purpose, and from outrage to organized action that secures the future that we all desire. Thank you all very much. Thank you, my two guests, Reverend Dr. Njoya and Ms. Makena Wairimu. Thank you so much for honoring us with your conversation.
Thank you very much.
For having us.